We are sitting here today speaking with Jenny Carnes. Is that how you say your name, Jenny?
Yep.
The president of San Antonio Sports. Jenny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We are almost 2 weeks after the Final Four, so we've had a little time to rest and recuperate, reflect. So yeah, back to life as we know it after the fact, yeah.
Yeah, like you mentioned, about 9 days out as we sit talking from the conclusion of the Final Four, brought tens of thousands of college basketball fans, sports celebrities, families to town and to downtown San Antonio, specifically to the heart of the city. So as someone who played a big role in helping organize the Final Four this year, how are you reflecting on it in the short term?
Well, over 100,000 visitors
Yeah.
to our beautiful city, and I think San Antonio just shined during Final Four weekend. Our team, myself, and many others started working on this project 8 years ago. And to see it come to fruition over 4 days was just magical. And I wasn't, the person boots on the ground this time around, but just to see it come together with like 4 number 1 seeds, the best 3 basketball games I've ever seen at a Final Four, amazing weather here in San Antonio in the month of April. Outstanding music at the music festival. It just could not have been drawn up better.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you and your team were obviously as busy as ever on the actual weekend of, but were you able to enjoy some of those festivities on yourself and see some of it?
Yeah, I mean, this was our 5th men's Final Four. 3rd women's Final Four I've been a part of, 2 Division I women's volleyball championships. And I mean, I've been in this job for 26 years. This might have been my last men's Final Four. And with the chair of our organizing committee, who's been a part of our organization for 25 plus years, we talked about that all year. Let's just enjoy it. Let's go to every event. This might be the last one we do together. And so we literally went to every event. We took it all in. Took our families, took our kids. It was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was there a specific moment or interaction that you think of that comes to you that made you think, we did it, we pulled this off, this is great? Or do you think of it more kind of in the aggregate?
I think the aggregate, but I think just getting to the championship game on Monday after the music festival had closed, after the tip-off tailgate event had closed, knowing that every event ended safely. We didn't have a major incident. That was the thing that has really kept me up for the last 2 years, is just thinking about public safety and knowing that we got to the end and we had 100,000 plus visitors. We had all these locals attend, so many great events downtown outside of the games, and it went off without a hitch. That's when I just got to the end of the night. And I was cheering for Houston. I think we all were as Texans, but got to the end of the night and just had this sense of relief that we made it. We've been planning this for 8 years, and we made it, and it was very successful, and just such a success for the city and a relief.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned how we kind of all started started rooting for Houston, just kind of that home state advantage, right? I remember when I did research for one of the articles I was doing, I don't think any NCAA champion won in the same home state where the Final Four was being hosted, at least on the men's side. So that's kind of such a unique angle that we have happened.
There's
right?
been a couple of teams from Indiana that Butler has
they
come very
national
close, but
championship,
I think you're right. I don't think anyone has ever won in their home state. Yeah. And I thought this was Houston's year. I thought they were going to win a couple years ago in Houston.
Right.
And they were so close, but still a great showing by their team.
Yeah. Jenny, I remember when I briefly talked to Elena at this point pretty much I guess a year ago, when last year's Final Four just wrapped up in Phoenix. She sent out a press release on behalf of San Antonio Sports and the organizing committee saying, now the page turns to San Antonio. We're in the heart of planning. She said that her team had come back from Phoenix to see how they did it there, first to see how they did it firsthand, pulled off a Final Four weekend. I think some people might assume, might think that that's where planning kicks into full gear. But you just mentioned it. This is 8 years,
8 years
of planning.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it really kicked off a year ago. That's when the page turns, right? When the NCAA starts looking at the next city and preparations in our host city. But when we started bidding on this event in the summer of 2017, and then were awarded in the summer of 2018 for 2025, we went to work on fundraising, on grants for Read to the Final Four. I mean, we went to work right away. So while the real nitty gritty didn't start until a year ago, we've been working on this for 8 years, thinking about where we're going to put the music fest, how are we going to do this with Civic Park being redeveloped, and a smaller space, where we know we needed to move the music fest to a bigger area.
Right.
Can we plant grass in front of the ITC? So yeah, these things were in motion years ago, but it really kicked off a year ago when the NCAA moved from Phoenix to San Antonio.
Right, and kind of you touched on this, but not in that time, in the last couple of years, you're keeping up with other developments happening in the city that might impact festivities, such as the opening of our new Civic Park space. You know how that happened.
Yeah. And that's a part of any event preparation.
Right.
You just have to what's happening, and we're working on our brand new marathon that we just launched in November, that will debut in December of this year. And so we're talking to the city every day. When are these construction projects going to be finished? So we're always in tune to what's going on and having to navigate around the progress of the city and what's coming next.
Yeah. Jenny, when it comes to the local organizing committee, San Antonio Sports was one player. There was obviously also the city of San Antonio, the Spurs, Visit San Antonio, of course. Can you give us a little bit of an idea about your team's specific role, and just how much planning and making sure this Final Four went off without a hitch became part of how much that encompassed your job over the last year?
Yeah, so we call ourselves SALOC, or the San Antonio Local Organizing Committee, which is comprised of the City of San Antonio, Visit San Antonio, that manages all of the housing and the hotels, all of our beautiful facilities, the convention center, the Alamo Dome, everything that the events took place in, and then our two host institutions, UTSA and Incarnate Word. But San Antonio Sports truly is the backbone of that entire LOC. We hire the staff, we manage the staff, we fundraise for the event, we manage the budget. So we have been the backbone for all of our other partners to come in and help support the massive effort that we all come together to do. But it starts with San Antonio Sports with the bid 8 years ago, and it ends with our wrap up next month. So San Antonio Sports is in the middle of all of it.
Yeah. In the aftermath of a big event like this, when you have those other local partners, do you or have you done like a kind of debrief with them? Has something like that happened yet?
Oh, for sure. We do it every time we host a Final Four. The NCAA will actually come back early weeks of May and do a meeting around every event program, community outreach. I mean, we'll spend 2 days in meetings debriefing on everything, and then we end the whole thing with a volunteer appreciation party for our 2,500 volunteers that came out and supported the event.
Wonderful. I want to ask about that too. How important is an event like Final Four? How important are volunteers helping make sure it goes off without a hitch? We told the stories of some that have involved in all the Final Fours that San Antonio has hosted, so for them it's kind of become a part of their life.
We can't do an event like the Final Four or a marathon or any other thing that we do throughout the year without our volunteers. Whether it's 20 volunteers for a small event or 2,500 volunteers for a Final Four, we couldn't do it without them. They are amazing. The city shows up and contributes with their time and their talents. And we've had volunteers that have been around longer than I have, 30 plus years. They have volunteered for every Final Four in San Antonio since 1998, which is before me. And they will take a week off from work. They will put in a vacation week just to volunteer, to come work for us. I mean, they're incredible. Yeah, we couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. Obviously, I imagine, Jenny, that that security must have been a big part of these conversations over the last year of true planning for this event. You know, thinking about what happened at the Super Bowl parade a couple years ago, the Bourbon Street incident pretty recently. So can you give us an idea of what those conversations were like? How early did they start, and how seriously everyone had to take to make sure this stayed a safe event?
Security is at the forefront of everyone's mind when it comes to an event of this magnitude. And it's one of the things we start talking about in early preparations. And then if something happens like what we saw in New Orleans, we make adjustments around that. This happened to us in 2018, right ahead of our last men's Final Four with the Vegas shooting. We made adjustments. So we have so many good partners with local PD, local fire, Homeland Security, FBI. I mean, it's a collective group that comes together and thinks through every possible scenario that could go wrong to prevent anything that can go wrong. Right. So a lot of concrete barriers were everywhere. I don't know if you saw them, but all around the building, all around downtown, all around the music fest. I wouldn't even share the other things because nobody wants to know that. It's scary, but yeah, that's probably the first thing that we start with in terms of planning.
When I was researching for one of the articles we wrote, Jenny, I found out that San Antonio has hosted now the Final Four, combined men's and women's. This marks 8 times.
Yep.
That's more than any other Texas city. It's nearly as much as all the other Texas cities combined.
Yep.
What do you think that says about how the NCAA views San Antonio and how good we are at making an impression?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think one, I think this is just a great destination city. People want to come to San Antonio. It's a beautiful city. The walkability, it's very different from Dallas or Houston where you have to get on a bus and go to the stadium. I mean, you can have a margarita 20 minutes before tip-off on the Riverwalk and then walk over. I think it's the footprint. I think it's the destinations, the culture. I think it's the volunteers that we've already talked about. It's the presence that we can create around this event. It's the biggest thing that we do. We don't have an NFL team. We will not host an Olympics. We will not host a Super Bowl. This is the biggest thing that we do, and our city treats it that way. I also think it's the consistency of our staff, our organizing committee. The NCAA trusts us because we know what we're doing. We've done it before. We have there's a couple of us have been around a long time, so there's some longevity of understanding the NCAA ways. So I think it's a combination of just being a great city, middle of the country, easy to get to, great weather, walkability, and then just we know how to put on a Final Four here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it really, everything you said kind of really does fit into the mission and the history of why San Antonio sports was created 4 decades ago, right? With the Mayor Cisneros and the efforts that he led to try and bring these big events while also kind of creating that community family angle. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we were really birthed out of the 1984 Olympic Games, and there was a couple of local heroes, I will call them heroes, that saw the games and saw what the Olympics could do for a host community, and they came back to San Antonio and said, sports can really develop not only a better quality of life for our citizens, but a youth legacy, youth sports, and that's how we were formed. And it really was after seeing the Olympic Games in person, and the 1998 men's Final Four was our second big event that we hosted under the San Antonio sports umbrella. So that's kind of how we kicked it off. Yeah.
Jenny, one thing that I think is so cool about that happens here in San Antonio when it hosts the Final Four is the River Parade, right? A couple hours after the game ends. This is the second one that I've been here for since I've moved to San Antonio myself. But 2021, obviously with the women's Final Four, a little bit limited, but they still had the River Parade.
We did.
Here, it was kind of the return of the full-blown celebration at Arneson Theater, right? Are you aware of any other city that does something like that, like just hours after the game ends?
We're the only one with a river. I mean, I think they have a canal in Indianapolis. That was my idea in 2018, and it seemed like a great idea. This is San Antonio. let's put the championship team on river barges and celebrate them at the end of the night. Sounded like a great idea until, we got to 2 a.m. and we were all still working. But unbelievable celebration, and to see that with Villanova in 2018, and then of course Florida a few weeks ago. And you saw the players come in on the barge and they're celebrating, and Coach Golden. I mean, it was a spectacular moment to end the weekend.
Yeah, it's goosebumps for sure, right? To see that happen just a couple hours after after they won.
Yep.
And now, kind of as you touched on already in our chat, the page turns to the women's Final Four in 2029 as far as the basketball tourney returning to San Antonio. I assume to some extent preps have already been going underway for that.
Well,
right?
Before that, we have the women's volleyball
Correct.
championship
Yes,
in December of 2026. So the
Okay.
page actually turns to that Final Four first.
Yeah.
And volleyball in the state of Texas is huge, and it is growing on the same pace as women's basketball. So we want to capture that excitement. We're going to host it right here in the Alamo Dome and hopefully break an attendance record. That's the goal. That's the goal of our women's basketball Final Four in 2029. That's how we put the bid forward 2 years ago, whenever we bid on that. San Antonio holds the all-time attendance record for Final Four, 2002.
Really? Okay.
29,619.
Wow, okay.
And we want to get to about 35,000 for women's basketball and get to 30 for volleyball.
Got it.
So we have our work cut out for us, but we have flipped the page.
Yeah.
We're on to the next project.
Got it. And that goal that record from 2002, that's for any women's Final Four sport?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. So you want to try and reach the 30,000 mark and
Yep.
surpass that.
Yep.
Come those tournaments.
Yep.
Cool. I love that. And now, obviously, from what I know Dallas has a men's Final Four coming up. I think 2031, 2030. None slated now for San Antonio. I'd like to ask you, what role does San Antonio sports play in helping to secure and put in the bid for hosting duties for these tournaments?
So the Final Four is bid out through 2031.
Yeah.
The next bid cycle will be 2032 through 2036, and according to the NCAA, that will start next summer, so summer of 26. That's so many years down the road. I'm already thinking about playing golf at that point. But no, we will manage the bid next year. We will facilitate all, bringing the partners back together and putting together the competitive bid that tells the story of what we just did 2 weeks ago, and what makes San Antonio great. So we will be behind that bid, and we will hopefully go out for another debut even before we know what Project Marvel looks like.
Yeah.
So we know we're ahead of that timeline on Final Fours, but we've done it before, so we'll do it again.
And I was going to ask about that. We don't know what the next 5 years will bring as far as potentially changing the landscape of not downtown as a whole, but specifically where a lot of these festivities are held. Hemisphere, where the former ITC building still sits for a little bit longer. The Alamo Dome. Does that play a role in how you formulate that bid?
It plays a huge role in the next 10 to 20 years of what we're looking at. Not just Final Fours, but other events that we can bring to not only the Alamo Dome, but just downtown. So we are watching that closely. We are 100% behind the city and in favor of this. I hope they can get it to the finish line. I don't think it will know anything before the next Final Four bid cycle on, can we put some plans forward on the dome, but I really don't think it's needed. I think we've shown them time and time again, this is the city that people want to come to.
Yeah.
This is the destination that coaches love for the coaches convention. And we might not be the fanciest dome stadium in the country, but come on, it's San Antonio. Perfect weather, margaritas, walk to the dome, walk back to your hotel. I mean, you can't ask for anything better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Jenny, 2025 will continue to be a big year for San Antonio sports. We're planning for the first San Antonio marathon and half marathon this December.
Yep.
Is there anything your team learned from the Final Four that you think can be applied to that as you continue to lead up to that?
We actually did a debrief yesterday morning with our staff, and because we all had different roles throughout the Final Four, and just looking at the Fan Fest and different activations that the sponsors put forward, I think we all walked away with, oh, we could do that, during the marathon in our expo. At the convention center, and that's just kind of what we do. You try to get better and be better after every event, and if you can't learn and grow and move forward, then what are we doing? Yeah.
Right. You mentioned, Jenny, obviously San Antonio Sports has a big history of helping to facilitate not just the Final Four, but other similar large events like it. That being said, did anything maybe unexpected happen this year, whether good or bad, come Final Four weekend that y'all hadn't thought of, anything to that extent? I mean, obviously, like you said, look, I'm sure y'all had contingency plans for weather. We had beautiful weather, things like that.
There was always some unexpected things. I won't dig into the details. But no, there wasn't anything that really surprised me this go around, and I've seen some surprises in years past. But no, I mean this was just smooth sailing. It just couldn't have gone better.
Great. Jenny, that's all the questions I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about planning for the Final Four, the people on your team who help organize it, that you think would be good for folks to know, just to give them an idea of the effort that it takes?
One of the things that we say across all of our hosting partners is that we are one team. With the City of San Antonio, Visit San Antonio, UTSA, Incarnate Word, San Antonio Sports. Mm-hmm. It's amazing when you know what's behind it, and you know what's the word? What's the word? What am I trying to say? Sorry.
Chemistry?
No, like the choreography.
Yeah, choreography.
Of the timing it takes to set up, the building and this across the freeway, and just how many people that it takes to make all of that happen seamlessly on one team. I'm so grateful and so proud of how San Antonio showed up. Yeah.